How are you doing today?
I'm great. It's a Friday, it's a beautiful fall day. It's Halloween weekends. I'm honestly I just love the fall vibes and I'm a Halloween girl. Like I've always been like a scary movie girl. So yeah, I just love it. I'm doing wonderful and I'm so happy to be podcasting with you. Third time's a charm, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, all in good name. I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And frankly,
Exactly.
I now that we're recording this podcast now, it's going to be released much sooner than it would have before. I think before it would have been like 2, 3 months before it came out, and now it'll be, I think, like maybe
Gotcha.
a month or less.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Yeah. Love
So
that.
So
Love that.
Kara is a fellow Christian, and if
Yes.
you've listened to all of the past podcasts, I've mentioned I'm trying to come up with a question to ask everybody, and obviously I'm not going to ask this to someone that I don't know their,
Right.
beliefs. But Kara, what is God doing in your life? How is He showing up, and what is He working to change in you at the moment?
Ooh, such a good question. And I feel like there are so many different things, but I feel like the biggest thing right now is that I am really working on, and he is working through me in allowing me to stay more present and like really focus, really put my focus on him and not have this fear of the future or worry.
Yeah.
And this is really something that I've been working through like my devotionals, my journaling, and also through therapy as well. So I feel like that's really where he wants me right now is in this season of being present and really just really being grateful for all of the things that I currently have rather than worrying about what's to come or what I might
Oh,
lose.
I
Yeah,
feel like every Christian can, I feel like even if you're not a Christian, I feel like every single person can relate to that because it's so easy
100%.
to just think that you don't have enough, think that the future is going to be better, and that,
Hmm.
all those issues. And, that was a big thing in my healing journey. It was like, well, this sucks. But
Yep.
there are things in this moment. Like I actually learned last year to like appreciate the weather changes. And last fall was when I was in the RV. It was when I was sick and could
Yeah, I
barely
remember
work
that.
and
Hmm.
super bloated. And I would just sit up. I had this doctor tell me to lay in the grass for 10 minutes every day, which
That
sounds,
grounding, man,
yeah,
it
that kind of,
works.
yeah. And I would just like lay there and just like sometimes I would just get this overwhelming feeling of gratitude and I'd start
Yeah.
weeping and I'm like, God, I love you so much. And
It's
uh,
so
yeah.
crazy. And I think it's amazing too to be able to like even doing something like that, like laying in the grass, whatever it may be. I was listening to Elevation Church podcast a while back, and he said something along the lines of, look up more, like
Mm,
just look up, right? Look up from having your head in the grind, like being on social media, looking at a screen, whatever it may be. And so I go on my daily walks, and that's like something that I'm constantly telling myself because it's easy to like want to multitask and stuff on our daily walks, be on a phone, whatever it may be. But I'm like, Kara, look up and like look at the world around you because
yeah.
fall, I don't know what it is about fall this year, but like it is, I feel like
Yeah.
it's so much more colorful than years prior. Like where I'm at is beautiful. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how can I be missing this right now? So yeah, I love that.
I feel like everyone's been saying that about fall, and it might just be that
Yeah.
like the pandemic's quote unquote over.
Yes, right.
Everyone's more happy and
Yeah,
grateful, and who knows? But I feel like
for
everyone's been
sure.
saying that. So, well, we'll
Yeah.
we'll dive right on in. I love that though, Kara. Thank you.
Yes.
So Kara, let's give a little bit of an intro. Who are you? What do you do? Just give us the little
Yes.
pizzazz.
Yes, for sure. So I am, like Kelsey said, my name is Kara Goss. I am an online health and fitness coach, a registered dietitian who primarily we really work with like functional health and women's health cases and also, working with body composition goals, fat loss, muscle growth, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm also a certified personal trainer. Have a master's in nutrition as well. So, Kelsey and I have pretty similar backgrounds in, dietetics and everything like that. And I am the owner of Kara Goss Nutrition and Fitness LLC, and our program is called Functional Fat Loss Academy. And so we really tie in, obviously like body composition goals, but also focusing on helping women improve their overall lifestyle and internal health and manage functional health issues as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Yeah, I mean,
That
I don't think I have much more.
That's Kara. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Kara.
So it's been really interesting because me and Kara met each other at a business retreat. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. At a business
So
retreat.
crazy.
So
That was
crazy.
so long
Was
ago.
that like 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago.
It was
And
2020. Yep.
yeah, and then we were both interested in functional medicine around the same time and both started diving into it because of our own health journeys. And that's what this podcast is going to be about today is Kara's post-birth control journey. So how did that help you transition into the functional medicine space? I feel like I went to the end, but I would love to hear, because, you know, as coaches, we always say that like you don't need to know everything to help someone. You just need to be a couple steps ahead of them. So how did going through your post-birth control journey open up functional medicine to you?
Yeah, so I always say that it's so funny to me because I had such a difficult time coming off of birth control, and I had so many friends who were transitioning off at the same time as me, who had like what looked to be like seamless journeys, got their period back right away, didn't have any crazy issues. And I genuinely believe that God had me go through all of these different things and these different issues to push me into the functional health space. And so I came off of hormonal birth control in January of 2021. And really, the reason I came off of it is because I was already kind of dabbling in the functional health space in late 2020. Like that's pretty much when you and I met, Kelsey.
Yeah.
And, you know, I kind of was making the decision in my head of like, okay, what are the pros and cons of like staying on it versus coming off, whatever it may be. I knew that I didn't want kids yet. But I was learning more and more about it. And I remember learning about the fact that the period that I was having on birth control was not my own. And that it was, you know, a pharmaceutically induced bleed. And that just blew my mind. And for someone who, you know, for people who have been in the health space and everything like that, it's like, you think I would have known that sooner, but I was never told that by anyone, by an OBGYN, a doctor, no one, right? And so I started doing my own research, and that's really what pushed me into coming off of it. And then once I came off in January of 2021, I, you know, started having all of these health issues and like some different symptoms popping up and different things that we'll kind of get into. And that is what really pushed me into the functional health space, because I started to realize that within my own education and research and all of that kind of stuff, I would work with all of these clients who, prior to me having all of this functional health knowledge, sometimes my clients just simply weren't getting the results that they wanted. And I was always so stuck because I was like, we are doing everything right from a lifestyle and diet and exercise standpoint. So what is the missing piece? And I started to realize that through my own journey, holy crap, it's hormones and internal health and gut and all of these different things are the missing pieces to getting to where you want to be. So that's what really pushed me into, you know, the functional health space. And like ever since, I've just been a sponge. Like you and I are the same, just like soaking in all of the information. And like I've completed a few functional health mentorships and courses and different things like that. So yeah, it's been incredible.
Yeah.
For sure.
So while you were talking, I had a couple of these like light bulb thoughts, and I lost the majority of them, but a couple of things that I think are really crazy. Right. Mm-hmm. When I wanted to get off birth control, I went to my doctor and I was on the depot shot for no joke.
Oof,
I think like 5 to 7 years. I responded to it really well. And didn't really have very many. I would gain like 5 pounds in my boobs every time I'd get on. No big deal. Right? Not a big deal, but I responded to it very well. But then I started hearing about the negative side effects of birth control and then researched the depot. And for those of you ladies that don't know, you were only supposed to be on the depot for 2 years max. After that, you have negative, possibly irreversible bone loss. And I asked my doctor about that, and he was like, oh yeah, maybe you should switch. Like, you know, it's not really that big of a deal, but like, here's another birth control you can go on. And I was just so appalled that in the 7 years, this guy's been my doctor since I was a kid and never thought to mention that to me.
Yeah. Crazy. And that just honestly speaks to the, just kind of like the Band-Aid that is conventional healthcare. And again, like I'm never here to bash doctors. There are some incredible doctors out there who genuinely do care and take the time. And I really do believe that a lot of doctors out there do care, but at the same time, they are governed by, you know, big pharma. They're given a really complex client and given 5 minutes to look at them. They don't have the time to look at your history and your mental health and your in-depth dieting history and all of these different things that are playing a role into like where you're at in your journey. And it's just so crazy because so many people are misinformed by doctors and OBGYNs, and it's sad. For sure.
Yeah, it is really sad. I feel like, you know, my vision for healthcare in the future, and luckily there are really great people and entrepreneurs out there that are starting to form these. And I would like, I always dream of having one of these formed in the future, or at least working for one. But I really think that people like me and you that are very educated in functional medicine and nutrition and lifestyle, that we are supposed to be there as, you know, someone that can do these intakes and follow-ups and report back to the doctor, like, hey, this is what they're going through. They want natural, they want conventional, they're sleeping well, or they're not, we're working on XYZ. But sadly, that's not the case at the moment. But I feel like, you know, if doctors, I mean, and here's a bigger issue, doctors don't necessarily respect dietitians. And not all of them do. Not all of them do. Some of them do.
But many.
I also have to say that not all dietitians are trained the way me and Kara are, which is also a big issue. So anyway, outside of that though, you know, we talked a little bit about the negative side effects of birth control, and I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that. And, you know, obviously bringing your story into it. What were some of the things that you might have been experiencing that you didn't know until you got off?
Yes. So of course, obviously we know that birth control does suppress certain hormones, right? And it really just causes hormonal confusion in the body. So it's really shutting down kind of like that contact from, you know, the brain to the ovaries. And so that was one of the really big things that I truly didn't understand that birth control was doing. It's like, okay, I knew that it was preventing me from getting pregnant, but I didn't really understand how it was happening. And I also didn't understand the importance of ovulation, you know, because I think a lot of women don't realize that ovulation is so extremely important. Even if you don't want to have children or aren't ready for it, right? Because ovulation is how we make progesterone, which is such an important hormone in the body. And so, you know, go ahead.
I feel like I just want to stress really quickly. So when we say that it suppresses the communication from your brain to your ovaries, I feel like some people hear that and they're still like, why do I care about that? And, you know, I mean, people are now learning that our periods are like a fifth vital sign. It's incredibly important to your overall health. And I don't think I'm going to have the words to stress this enough, but it is the most important thing. Like, I really just can't put into words. I don't know if you have better words to stress the importance there.
Yeah, I think it's just, we have to think about it as like, it is this natural process that occurs every single month for a reason, right? Like, we are not getting a period just to get a period. And the importance of also getting a period is that we have all of these hormonal fluctuations leading up to that period that play important roles in our overall health, the rise of estrogen, the rise of progesterone. And I think that these hormones get a really bad rep from a lot of people because they associate them with like negative period symptoms or being emotional, whatever it may be.
Or breast cancer.
Breast cancer, yes. And they don't truly realize that like when these hormones are imbalanced, they do play such a big role in our mood and libido, energy levels, bone density, blood sugar balance, all of these different things. And so like that period, again, like that's kind of like, you know what I mean? That's the end of all of those cycles of fluctuation in our hormones. And I do love kind of looking at it as a fifth vital sign because it truly is. And I think that so many women are taught like, oh, you can just, you know, shut it off, take birth control that like doesn't make you get a period, whatever it may be. And it's like, we kind of have to think about this in a logical way of like, this is something that my body does naturally every single month. So how healthy is it for me to not have a period? You know?
I would love to look more into like traditional cultures and how they view, you know, your menstruation, because they have like these big parties.
They have big celebrations and ceremonies.
And even when women go through menopause, it's like this, apparently like they treat it as this really beautiful, like coming into like your spirituality and
we demonize it.
And we demonize it. And honestly, like I could talk about this for a really long time, but I feel like it's partially an issue with our culture because we're like, oh, just have sex with whoever you want. It's no big deal. Sex, and I feel like I could go on this rant. Sex is a big deal, you guys. Like, you know, and like I don't think that there's anything liberating about going out and being a hoe. Like I did it for years and it made me feel like crap. And if I could go back, like I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have been on birth control for so long. Like I would have liked to have saved myself for someone and actually I can't go back, right? But like our culture says that I feel like there's two directions and there's kind of the split in our culture where there's this one side that's like, sex is liberating, go and express yourself as much as you want. And then there's kind of the other side that's like, no, it's really is something special meant for two people. So anyway, rant over on that. So so what are some of the other negative side effects of birth control that you see with your clients and that you yourself might have experienced?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of like things that I see in clients, definitely, obviously, we know it's linked to anxiety and depression. So many of my clients who are on birth control are diagnosed anxiety and depression, so obviously, like we can see increases in inflammation in the body. It can actually worsen insulin resistance, and those with PCOS are kind of always like, holy crap, because we know that, insulin resistance is a really big driver in PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. And then these women are given birth control and it's like, well, this could be making the issue worse. So that can be a really big one, impacting libido, like altering the gut microbiome. And so in terms of things that I personally experience coming off of birth control, so I'm not going to lie, like I did start experiencing a lot of different things and a lot of different like symptoms and everything like that, but they definitely weren't, I feel like, as bad as they could have been. But basically for me, like the very first quote unquote symptom that I started experiencing was obviously I wasn't ovulating regularly. So for me personally, I came off of birth control in January of 2021, and it took me until October of 2021 to actually get my period back regularly and start ovulating again. So it took me 10 months. And a lot of people are just like mind blown by that. But again, that comes with a side effect of, or with, kind of the territory of not having ovulated for the past 8 years of my life. Right.
Yeah.
So that definitely took a while to come back. The next thing was weight gain and inflammation. And this was definitely the most difficult part of my journey. I ended up gaining at the end, like I'm now in a cutting phase, which we can kind of talk about, a little bit later about where I'm at now. But I ended up gaining at my heaviest about 30 pounds. So, I went from like 120 to almost 150. And that was really hard. I'm a short girly. I'm 5 foot. So 5 pounds feels like a lot on me. And I was so inflamed. Like when I tell you, even looking at myself at like the weight I'm at now and with me being at this same weight, like even like half a year, like a year ago, I was so much more inflamed then. Like I look at pictures of my face and it's just like moon face, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so a lot of inflammation. So I did have some digestive issues start to happen as well. Nothing insane, but I was experiencing some bloating, some constipation, which I did end up getting a GI map done. And honestly, at the time, I was still really learning about how to read a GI map and everything like that, because this was still pretty early in 2021. And I remember the mentor I was working with at the time was like, this is honestly one of the better GI maps I've ever seen. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. But I had really low secretory IgA. And I'm not sure if you've ever spoken about that on here, but basically whenever we have low secretory IgA, we are often seeing that like our immune system is a little bit compromised, right? And so we really need to work on getting that up. So started seeing those digestive issues happening. My training progress started like plummeting. Like I was just like getting weaker and weaker in the gym. Wow. I felt really, really, really weak. And then much later, like in March of actually this year, so this was like over a year past coming off of hormonal birth control, I started developing insomnia and I had really low cortisol levels. So yeah, it was honestly it was kind of like a ripple effect. And some of the things that happened didn't happen until a while after coming off of birth control.
Okay. Question. I really want to know more about this insomnia and low cortisol levels, because you would think that you're exhausted, right?
Okay. Yes. So So this is something that we kind of discovered so I started working with a new functional health coach back in February of this year. And so we ran a Dutch test and we did see that, my cortisol pattern was pretty low. And so with cortisol, I feel like the cortisol imbalances, like the symptoms that you can experience can really like fluctuate across the board. Like people with high cortisol can have insomnia and people with low cortisol can have insomnia. And what we were seeing is that we were thinking that I might have been having like a cortisol dump to kind of help, bring up those cortisol levels and kind of help adapt and regulate because my cortisol levels were so low. And so the other side of this as well is that I do think it had to do with my low cortisol, but the other side of it was that it was so mentally related. I was giving myself like anticipatory anxiety whenever I started developing insomnia because I'm somebody who knows how much I thrive off of sleep, and I would go to bed worrying that I wouldn't be able to sleep, and then I wouldn't be able to sleep. It's gotten so much better now, especially because I've also been supporting my cortisol levels, but it was a terrible cycle. It lasted like 5 months straight. I would be up until like 4 a.m. every night. It was terrible.
Wow. I bet you got a lot of work done though.
But that's the thing is like, I didn't want to do anything. So I just lay there mad. I was just mad.
Yeah. Do you know Dr. Caroline Leaf?
I think so. I've heard of the name.
She's amazing. So she's one of my favorite. I don't know technically what her title is, but she's a psychologist, a researcher, writes books. She's actually I've probably talked about her before on this podcast, but she is the woman that developed the idea that you actually can change your brain. She's the one that founded neuroplasticity. So she's like,
oh, that's so cool.
She's like the OG.
The OG. Oh my gosh.
Neuropsychology. Yeah. In neuroscience. That's amazing. Yeah, and she has this really good podcast all about sleep, and she actually recommends that, like, obviously you don't want to do this every night, but if you have a night where like you really can't fall asleep, she actually recommends wake up, get out of bed, and like if you can read a book or work or do something, that'll actually help you be able to fall asleep better the next night. So yeah,
that's yep, for sure. That's amazing. I would love to look into her. And another thing too that I'm sure played a really big role in this is that my progesterone levels were tanked whenever I came off of birth control. Like they were 0.2 for a year. It took me a lot to bring them up, and they're still not exactly where I want them to be, but I got them up to close to a 2, which is better than 0.2, right?
Yeah. So I'm off birth control for it's been 3 years now, and I just got a Dutch done recently, and it looks pretty good, other than my estrogen levels are still high for seamlessly no reason. But I think it might be, I'm going to be very upfront with y'all on this podcast, this YouTube channel. I think it might be marijuana related. I just learned that marijuana will actually, and same with alcohol, it'll increase aromatase activity. So that testosterone, and my testosterone's low. So it'll take that testosterone and convert it to estrogen. But then I was also exposed to mold. So I'm like, I don't know if it's mold related, but
yeah, it could definitely be a combo of both, especially in those cases. There's normally like a few different factors driving it,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, man.
Okay, so now we know what you went through. Also, I really want to touch on this because we had talked about this previously, libido. Because
yes,
I think this is something that's really important, and people don't talk about any of this enough. Luckily, it's changing.
No.
So something that I learned, I think I might have learned it a year ago and it just re-popped up. But when we're on birth control, we actually have a different preference towards.
It's so crazy.
Towards people.
Towards whoever we're attracted to, males. Yes. It's so nuts.
It's so crazy. And I thought this was really interesting. So me and Sam met actually when I was off birth control. And then, I met him. I was ready to be in a relationship. And I was like, well, I don't want to get pregnant, right? So I went on birth control and things were fine at first. And then I remember one time he asked me, he was like, I just feel like you never want to have sex with me. And I was like, well, it has nothing to do with you. I just never want to have sex, which is crazy because now I am just like on fire. I'm like,
we're ready to go.
I'm like ready to go. My body's like, give me a baby, even though we're like obviously waiting another like year and a half. But like, it's so crazy because now he, it's like the roles are complete. They're not flipped. He's still into it, but I'm like,
yes,
let's go. So,
oh my gosh, yeah.
So did you experience something similar with your libido?
Yes, yes. So I actually went through a really difficult time with my boyfriend, Kevin. And it was like 2019, 2020. And I was just like, I remember it was like a year. And here's the thing is like, I have a lot of previous sexual trauma in my life as well. So there's definitely some of that that played into like my lack of wanting to be intimate and have sex. But I will say that like my libido at one point was just like tanked. Like I did not want to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I really, really struggled with that. And it all made sense whenever I came off of birth control and I saw that my testosterone was pretty freaking low, right?
Yeah.
And so that can definitely contribute to low libido, but it's something that since as I came off of birth control, I definitely saw that increasing in me. And I also worked through a lot of like past traumatic things as well, and like things with my body that really helped me kind of like step into my own like, you know, power in that way more and like
Yeah.
be that more like intimate person. But 100% like that was something that definitely changed for me after coming off of birth control is like, yeah, I was so much more ready to go and like actually desired to have that connection, you know?
Yeah. And I think something for people that are listening that might help it make more sense, right? We have our period every month when we're off of birth control, that period, that true period. It's because we ovulate. I mean, you can have a period and not ovulate. I went through that because my progesterone was so low. You probably went through the same thing.
Yep.
But once you're actually ovulating every month, your body wants you to become pregnant. And what do you need to do to become pregnant? You need to make a baby. So
exactly.
You know, sometimes I think it's, you know, I always tell my clients and just like general people, if you're ever confused about something, think about 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, before everything got industrialized, how were people living? What were people doing? And that can usually give like clear signs of, you know,
for sure. Yeah, for sure. That's huge.
Okay. So when you got off of birth control, what sort of things did you start doing to support your body? You know, what labs? You already mentioned some of the labs.
Yes.
So yeah, what were the first steps that you took, just so people, if anyone's interested in getting off, they can maybe do something similar?
For sure. And I will say, I know so much more now than I did even back then. But I did start doing, you know, a lot of the right things. And these are things that obviously I will have like my clients do as well. So obviously, very first thing is yes, like I got lab work done. I did wait until about 3 months post birth control just to because I wanted to see like if I was going to get my cycle back and just to kind of give my hormones a little bit of time to regulate on their own. But I did get like a comprehensive blood panel done. So I utilized the comprehensive weight loss panel from Life Extension. So we tested thyroid, sex hormones like CBC, CMP, lipid panel, CRP, cortisol, insulin, all of that good stuff. So got all of those things tested.
I have a question.
I have
a question for you. I'm assuming here, but did you wait to do the Dutch until you were actually ovulating? Okay. I've like kind of went back and forth on that because I know that you can do it. Granted, I would definitely want to wait until probably like we did a Dutch, maybe like 3 to 6 months, but it's definitely better to wait till someone's ovulating to do that test. So
the Dutch, my first Dutch test wasn't until it was like March of this year. So it was like over a year after I got off of birth control. Yeah. So really I just relied on blood work at first. And then I got that GI map done within like a few months post coming off as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so did that. And so first thing was that I began increasing my calories. And so at the time I was working with a coach, again, like never want to bash, did amazing things for me, but probably didn't have the most functional health knowledge and women's health knowledge as well. So actually right up until coming off birth control, I was in a calorie deficit, like I was in a cut, and that was a no-no, right? But at the time, I was still so new to like learning about these things and different things like that. I'm like, yo, I just need to get off. You know what I mean? So started increasing my calories. And of course, I'm sure that that also contributed to some of that weight gain as well. But we increased my calories. I mean, by the end, I was eating more calories than I've ever eaten in my life, which I mean, I don't complain about because I love food, right? And I started really focusing on food quality as well. So I was really
Yeah.
already eating, you know, a pretty quality diet, balancing blood sugar well, eating balanced meals, all of that kind of stuff. But I really started cutting out like most of like the packaged processed things and really started focusing on like what can I get, you know, like organic versus conventional, all of that kind of stuff. And just like doing those little things that work for me. Again, like I don't want a ton of people stressing, like absolutely stressing about those things. But again, like it definitely does make a difference.
Yeah, I want to make a note on that. So me and
Mhm.
Kara have been on health journeys for a very long time. Like I first got into, I mean, granted, I wanted to get fit and lose weight and
Yeah.
right. But
We come
anyway,
from a flexible eating background.
yeah, so this was like, well, I come from like, 9 years ago, I was doing Herbalife.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
same,
I
big
did,
same. Yeah.
did keto for a while. But anyway, I just want to,
Advocate. Yeah.
yeah, I just really want to stress that like, everyone's on their own journey. And, I have some clients that come to me and are eating out for almost every single meal. It's just like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I'm not going to take you and put you on a similar diet, recommend a similar diet that I'm on. It's like, we got to get you cooking. But then I might have
Exactly.
someone that like, I'm working with one dietitian right now. She already eats really well. And, we're taking things to a different level than I would take a client who is, eating all fast food. So I just
Yep.
want to, let people know, like, as me and Kara evolve, we're making more changes, and we might look like we're at this place now of like, I don't know. I don't want to use the word holy grail, but that's all I can think of right
Yeah.
now. When really we're not. It's just we've been
No.
doing this for so long, and we have this education and these habits developed that we're more easily able to make more drastic,
Yes.
what looks like drastic changes to some people.
Yes, like definitely don't get ahead of yourself and start with things that feel easy for you, right? Because like we can give you the perfect plan on paper, but if it doesn't feel sustainable for you, it's not going to work, you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's huge. So obviously increasing calories, food quality was huge. Honestly, biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody coming off birth control is managing stress. Like managing stress in all forms. So for me, that looked like pulling back my training intensity. I was training 5 days a week to failure. I pulled back to 4 days a week. I was training with reps in reserve, so leaving like 3 to 4 reps in reserve. There was a point where I took completely an entire month off of lifting and I was just doing yoga and gentle movement. Really, really focusing on sleep quality. And I really, really honed in on my boundaries for myself. And I set a really solid nighttime and morning routine because one thing that I notice about myself, and I feel like most people notice this as well, is like my anxiety is highest in the morning. Like I wake up and my brain is in a million different places. And so breath work, meditation, journaling, all of those were really big for me. And also in terms of like managing stress was just like allowing myself to say no was
Yeah.
so huge and not running myself into the ground. So that was huge. Obviously, like I said, managing sleep was absolutely huge. I started really supporting my liver detox pathways. So I
Woo-hoo.
supplemented with, yes, we love
Hey, we
that.
love
I
the
know
liver.
Kelsey's the liver queen. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So I did supplement with things like N-acetylcysteine and milk thistle. I really started adding in some really supportive foods. So like I started making like big smoothies with like tons of liver supportive foods, beets, berries, arugula, turmeric, all of the good things. And I also started focusing on doing some simple swaps. Again, nothing to like super overwhelm myself, but some simple swaps to allow me to reduce my exposure to toxins and endocrine disruptors.
Yeah,
So I
that's
swapped,
huge.
my plastic Tupperware to glass and like started using cleaner beauty care and all of that kind of stuff. I still need to get a Berkey filter. I'm asking for one for Christmas. So yeah, so those were some big things. Decrease my caffeine intake. That was really big. And I'm already not a huge drinker, but I did like definitely say no to like more, not even events, but like I would just like cut back on any alcohol at events that I was having. I would probably only drink like have a drink like maybe one time a month. But even that, like I was like cutting it down to every other month. Balance my blood sugar. I was pretty much already doing that through eating balanced meals and quality foods. And I also added in some, helpful supplementation to support my progesterone levels, like chasteberry. And I added in boron to support testosterone too. And
Okay.
really,
I have
go
to,
ahead.
I have to jump in. I don't know
Yes.
about boron. So tell me about boron with testosterone. I'm not familiar with
Okay,
that.
so boron does help to increase free testosterone levels,
Cool.
and that is what I was really struggling with the most. My total was pretty good, but free. Normally, we're looking at like a dosage of anywhere from like 3 upwards to like 12 milligrams. I was doing 6 milligrams daily, and it definitely helped. And I've seen it help a lot as well in other clients too. I used to have some male clients that I used to work with, and like what when we've supplemented with boron, it's made a huge difference. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of that. Yeah, my free testosterone has been chronically low, so I
Yeah.
might add that in.
Boron for sure.
Cool.
Boron's definitely helpful. And I would say like the last biggest thing was being kind to myself. And I know that we'll kind of get into like that mental side of things, but honestly, the mental side of things was the hardest thing for me. Like seeing my body change in the weight gain, that was my biggest struggle.
Yeah,
For sure.
I want to dive into that now. So also,
Yes.
I know you had to pull your training back, which is huge
Yes.
for you. You had it while you're
Huge.
gaining weight.
While I'm gaining weight. Mhm.
So let's talk more about that.
Yeah. So I was in a really, honestly, like really, really bad. It's funny to me because like I was in a really bad place with myself, but at the same time, my relationship with my body and food was healing and I wasn't even really realizing it. So like, during this time, obviously, like I'm seeing the scale go up and it can be so hard to continue to see the scale go up on like a weekly basis and have to eat more calories and have to pull back training. But like we know that getting a period is a calorically expensive process. Like we need to be fueling ourselves with enough food. And so like I'm just like I'm seeing myself like I'm puffier, I'm bigger, like I'm just like my clothes aren't fitting me anymore, like literally nothing fit me. And it was just like this process of like, okay, I can either stop and give up and like but what is that going to do for me? That was kind of always the internal dialogue that I was having for myself, is like I know that I'm going to get through this, and I constantly reminded myself that this was a temporary journey and I had a coach to guide me through, which made all of the difference. But the thing is that like I asked myself, okay, what is, like if I really want to lose this weight and stuff, like what is going into a dieting phase going to do? It's going to prolong my period from coming back. It's going to make hormones worse. And I ultimately knew that I had to go through this discomfort to get to the end goal of ultimately where I'm at now. But like, I'm not going to lie, like most weeks I was crying in the gym bathroom. Like I was fed up. It's just like, it was really hard to see this body that you've worked for so long, because I come from a history of like of kind of being that person who always struggled a little bit more to lose the body fat. Like I've never been like the super skinny friend or whatever it may be, and I worked really, really hard to get my body to a place that I thought, quote unquote, I was happy with. And to see that kind of all deteriorate and like unfold and me not be able to do anything about it, it really messed with me mentally. And so that was definitely one of the biggest things that I had to overcome and work through in terms of my body image and going to therapy and working through these things. Like there were a lot of different things that I implemented to get through that period. But I will say that I think that that's the biggest thing that people struggle with, and why most people don't reach their goals is because they get in their own way and they hate sitting in that discomfort.
Yeah. So my post birth control journey kind of ties into my gut healing journey, but basically I got off birth control, got my period 8 months later, was dealing with anxiety. I had a panic attack, was way overstressed, didn't do anything right, went into a diet, then started powerlifting. Like, what the heck was I doing?
Seriously.
But anyway, then I started to develop gluten intolerance. Not a huge deal, just couldn't eat a ton of gluten. And then I had COVID and the concussion, okay, which like, then all of a sudden my whole body is like out of whack. I'm like probably clinically depressed, crying every day, extremely bloated, had parasites, SIBO, H. pylori, like all the things. And for me to have went through, it was about like a 10-month hardcore healing journey. And then like I still made a lot of changes now that like are continuing the healing process. But apparently 10 months for me, when I've told people my story that are functional medicine practitioners, they are like, wow, like that's amazing that you went like healed from majority of that in 10 months.
10 months.
Which I was like, wow, 10, like I was on protocol after protocol after protocol, pooping parasites and you know, like fatigued and not able to do anything and doing coffee enemas and doing all these crazy things that people are like, you did all that? Right.
Yeah.
And 10 months to me felt like such a long time. And now in the grand scheme of things, it's actually not a very long time for a gut healing journey. And especially and same with post-birth control. So
yeah, like I'm obviously like I'm still working to optimize things, but in total, like my entire like healing journey up to when I was able to, you know, get back into a cutting phase, start losing some of the weight and actually feel better again, have a regular period, all of those things. It took me over a year and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, like, and that just speaks to how long these things take. And again, that's another reason why it's so easy for people to give up because we live in such a quick fix world and they don't realize how long it takes.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like it's taking, you know, when people want to lose weight, right? They want something really quick. This is taking that mentality of like, okay, no, we want lifestyle changes. We want this to be, you know, long term. It's taking that, but like literally to an extreme, like
extreme.
And you need so much patience. And, you know, that again, similar to what Kara was saying, this just goes to show how complex our body is and honestly how screwed up
my God.
our bodies were.
Yeah.
But it takes that long. And, you know, you think about it, you were on birth control. I was on birth control for 7 years. I don't know. You mentioned like
8. Yeah.
8 years. That does a huge, huge toll on your body. And it took a year and a half and you're still not like optimal, you know?
No.
And I don't feel like you know, we want to probably start trying in like a year and a half, I think, year and a half. And I'm still like right now, I'm in this phase of like, what are things that I can do to make sure that when I'm pregnant, that I'm not passing toxins onto my baby, that like my baby doesn't end up with some neurodegenerative condition because I gave it mercury or I gave it, you know, glycophosphate or gave it something else. And that, you know, like I'm working on continuing my health for my future baby. And I don't know what that had to do with what we're talking about right now.
I mean, I think it just goes to show that it's a continual journey, you know, and like optimal in all aspects is pretty hard to achieve, you know, like it's not because things are constantly fluctuating. And so I think it's really important. I think it's easy for us to get caught up in like having perfect lab work or optimal lab work or whatever it may be, but we also need to look at, okay, how are we feeling too? Like what are the symptoms and where are we at? You know what I mean? Because everything's always fluctuating. So
yeah. And I think something too is like looking at the lifestyle you want. So I'm in some spaces of like ancestral food, where like these women, their diets are like so perfect. Okay. Like I'm telling you, like, like they don't go to grocery stores. They get everything sourced locally. Like literally perfect. And I look at my life and I'm like, oh, how would I feel if I did that? And honestly, I probably wouldn't feel that great because food is a huge part of my life, you know, and travel sometimes and, you know, and I probably wouldn't feel that great. I'd probably feel like I'm missing out on things. So you have to find that balance that works for you.
You absolutely do. That's huge for sure.
All right, Miss Kara. So, oh my gosh, there were so many more things that we wanted to talk about. We only have like 10 minutes left. I feel so much pressure right now. I'm like, okay, so let's just kind of go to where you're at now, Kara. Obviously, that was a huge, very long journey, mentally taxing. You went through a cut. So kind of walk us through where you're at now, how you're feeling, and what you gained from that experience.
Yes, for sure. And, you know, I think that, so obviously where I'm at now, so like I said, I transitioned to a new functional health coach back in, you know, February, and he kind of really helped me work through like the last of any big issues that I was having. So I am in a fat loss phase right now. I've been since the end of June. It's been so slow, painfully slow. But I am down about 11 pounds, which, it feels like a lot for me because again, I'm short. And really, I will genuinely tell you that I am in the absolute best place I've ever been with my body and with food as well. And truly gaining that weight genuinely made me accept and respect my body so much more because we all have that phenomenon where it's like we look back at a picture of ourselves and we're like, oh my God, I wish I looked like that again. But at that time of the picture, you hated the way that you looked. And so I promised myself that I would never be that person again, that I would never be that person who doesn't accept and respect and appreciate where her body's at in this moment. And honestly, gaining that weight taught me that. Like,
Yeah.
I really had to detach my value from the scale and my worth from the scale and find my worth in so many other things. And that's where our faith comes in as well. But so that was absolutely huge. And my symptoms have, pretty much cleared. I actually haven't gotten labs here in like 3 or 4 months. I'm due to get them pretty soon. But things are going really well. Like my insomnia has pretty much cleared up. There's still a little iffy days here and there, but again, nothing's ever perfect. I just got like my 12th period in a row. I have a normal period, have had it for a year. I'm ovulating. At least I'm having all of the signs of ovulation. So things are going really well. And I'll just say, like, honestly, what this journey has taught me is like, you have to have acceptance for yourself at every single part of the journey. And like, if you cannot accept yourself and like cannot be kind to yourself, it's going to make your healing journey really, really difficult. Like, that's something that so many people struggle with.
Yeah. So I had a podcast episode. It's the second episode that will have already been dropped by the time this one's out.
Yay!
We talk
Exciting.
about like a hierarchy of health goals, right? And I think people always want like what I call the peak, which at the peak, this is like the last thing to work on, which is performance, body composition, and I think those are the main things. But at the very bottom is having a healthy relationship with food in your body, because it's really very challenging to start making diet changes if you have an underlying terrible relationship with food or eating disorder or borderline eating disorder. Like it's just
so huge.
You just really you can't. You have to heal your relationship with food, because we can't tell you, like, it's really hard if someone's like bloated all the time and I'm like, hey, you really need to go on a gluten-free diet, but you're viewing food as like this enemy that's going to make you gain weight. You're fearful because then you're always going to look at gluten in the wrong, I don't know,
negative connotation.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And I totally agree with that too, because I come from a history of binging and restricting. So my relationship with food at a point in this journey was absolutely terrible. And now it's like, I can't even remember the last time I had a binge, and it's like, you have to improve that relationship with food before anything, because like, that's the one thing that you're going to have your entire life is your relationship with food and your relationship with your body,
Yeah. So just want to say to people, one of my next questions for Kara is, when do you think the right time to get off birth control is? And I'm gonna hop in here and just say that I think you can get off of birth control even if you have a terrible relationship with food. I think that it might be a good idea to work on that ASAP. Right. But like healing your gut and healing your hormones, when someone comes to me, depending on where they're at, we're working at that bottom of the pyramid. It's like, how can we heal your relationship with food? Then once that's starting to get a little bit better, it's like, okay, let's dive into more of the nitty gritty of gut and hormone health. So I'd love to hear your answer on that. I mean, that wasn't really my full answer, but I'm going to give it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, like, it definitely is a difficult question, because it's like, we can never tell you when to come off, right? And I just always want to make sure that my clients feel super educated and they feel super supported in their decision to come off. But I will say that ultimately, like, yes, it'll depend on the person, but I do think that we should like wait until we have some of those basics down first. We're focusing on things like, balancing blood sugar, stress, sleep, supporting the gut, whatever it may be, and kind of do like a little prep phase before you come off. I definitely would say, if you are somebody who was like working on body composition goals in a fat loss phase, whatever it may be, and you're in a calorie deficit, Do not choose to come off right after that. Allow your body to get back up to maintenance, eat more calories. And a lot of times, most women are considering coming off of birth control before they're trying to get pregnant, right? And so to that, I will usually say, come off at least a year before, because you genuinely never know what's going to happen, if not sooner, because if I would have come off and wanted to get pregnant, I wouldn't have been able to.
Yes. Okay. This drives me crazy, because then they go to their doctor, they're not getting pregnant. They do IVF, a couple rounds of IVF, which is like $30,000.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
It's like, if you would have came off birth control 2 years prior, you would have hired someone like me and Kara. You would have saved so much money. Like, I have this client right now who's done multiple rounds of IVF. She has PCOS, just all of these problems. And she never once did anyone ask her about her diet, her sleep, recommend certain supplements. I'm like, this is like crazy to me.
So insane.
Yeah. Something that I want to touch on with Kara or add on to Kara's response that we didn't really talk about in the podcast, but I have a client who came to me. She was interested in getting off of birth control, but had really bad GI issues, ended up passing a parasite before we even went through parasite protocols, which was absolutely, it was huge. I was like,
that's insane.
Like, that came out of you and we didn't even try. Like, we kind of tried, but not really.
That's wild.
Just going gluten-free. No joke.
Wow.
That's this huge parasite.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh, that's insane.
So crazy. So I just want to kind of share with people, we did a lot of gut healing. We were doing a lot of liver support. She started taking a probiotic. We made some changes to her diet. She is a vegetarian, so we kind of added in a lot of nutrient dense vegetarian foods.
Yes, and making sure that you're like replacing those nutrients that birth control depletes.
Exactly. So we were kind of doing all these things: stress management, sleep. And then, once she went through this really intense gut healing phase, and we were more on like a rebuilding gut health, again with probiotics, fermented foods, things of that nature, improving gut lining. Then I was like, hey, you've supported your liver. She does castor oil packs a couple times a week. I was like, if you wanted to get off, like, now would be an all right time. So I just want to throw that out to people to just give some more tangible of what you can do. So we're coming to the end of this episode. I feel like I could talk to Kara for forever.
Oh my gosh. We could talk about this forever.
Totally get started. So, Kara, what is one piece of advice that if a random woman walked up to you and she was like, hi, Kara, what is one piece of advice that you would give me? What would it be?
Yeah, so I think the biggest piece of advice would be that you cannot hate your body into a place of self-acceptance or where you want it to be. And you have got to look at you and your body as a team. Fighting against your body is not going to do anything for you, and you really have to work with yourself. So I think just understanding that it's okay to want to change and it's okay to want to make changes, but you have to do it from a place of self-acceptance and a place of self-love, or else, losing that weight, getting to that health goal, whatever it may be, you're not going to be happy unless you truly accept the person that you are. I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah. And again, I feel like in the nutrition space, there's like so much polarization, right? You have the like macro trackers, and then you have the intuitive eating space, right? And both of us like kind of meet in the middle of like, you do a lot more macro. I do a little bit more intuitive eating, but it's a lot of like, where can we meet clients where they're at? Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to improve your body composition. I think as long as it's coming from a healthy place, and it's not like the end all be all for you, because you're not going to be happier just because you lost weight. Like, and I think that's something I tell people all the time. A lot of people come to me and they're like, they associate losing weight with being healthier. And just because when you were younger, you were skinnier and healthier, that doesn't mean that losing weight is automatically going to make you healthy. Because usually by the time people come to me and Kara, you got way more problems than just weight. Usually like not the first thing that's being addressed anyway. So at least for me, it's usually like,
it's the last normally.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, Kara, thank you so much for being here. We love Kara Goss, so please support her. Where can people find you if they want to see more of your content and connect with you?
For sure. So you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at karagoss_RD. You can also look at my website. It's just karagossrd.com. And then I also have a free Facebook group called Functional Fat Loss Secrets for Women. So if you'd like to join that, we do tons of free education and trainings in there.
Yeah, your Facebook group is lit. I used to have a Facebook group and I technically still have it. There's so much work though. I'm like, I don't know. Man.
There's work to be done.
There's so much work. So Kara also has a podcast.
Oh yes.
With,
oh my
with your
gosh.
friend Kylie, right? Kylie's your name?
Yes. Yes. So I have a health and fitness podcast with my best friend Kylie Kaiser called the Not Your Quick Fix podcast, and it's on Apple and Spotify. So
Yay.
give us a listen. We would love that.
All right. Well, go follow Kara and connect with her. She's super awesome and we love her. So yeah. I never know how to close a podcast. I'm like, what do I do now?